This slideshow will show you how to add and subtract fractions whose denominators are different. It's a step-by-step process involving 4 steps. The first is to find the least common denominator, which means you make the denominators the same size pieces. The second step is to determine your equivalent fractions. Then you should either add or subtract fractions with the common denominator. And finally, reduce your answer to lowest terms if possible. Let's look at finding the least common denominator, or LCD. There are actually 4 different methods I'm going to show you, and we will take a look at each one of them. The first method is to find the prime factors of the denominators. In this example, we have 2 sixths plus 2 ninths. The first step is to answer the question, what are the prime factors of our 2 denominators? For 6, it's 2 times 3. For 9, it's 3 times 3. Now our LCD needs to have both denominators represented, so I'll start with representing 6 by writing down 2 times 3. In order to represent 9, I have to look at its prime factors. We see that the first 3 here is represented in our bottom equation. That leaves the second 3 in red. By adding this to our list of factors, we are representing 9 as well. Multiplying these numbers together gives us 18. Therefore, our least common denominator is 18. Method number 2 is finding the least common multiple, or the LCM. Using the same problem, 2 sixths plus 2 ninths, I need to list the multiples of both denominators. We learned that earlier by skip counting. I've listed just a few of the multiples of each. Now, I notice that the smallest multiple they have in common is the number 18. That's what's circled in red. I want to show you that they also have 36 in common, as well as other numbers down the line, but we want the smallest, the least common multiple, and that is 18. Our least common multiple of 18 becomes our least common denominator. The next method is the shortcut to the method we just looked at. Instead of listing the multiples of both denominators, 6 and 9 in this example, we need to find the larger denominator. In this case it's 9, and we'll skip count by that number until we reach a multiple that the other denominator goes into evenly. So I'll skip count by 9 until I reach a number that that 6 goes into evenly. 9, 18, and I'll stop right there because 6 goes into 18 evenly. Therefore, our least common denominator is 18. Method number 4 is multiply denominators. In our same problem, here with our denominators of 6 and 9, we would need to multiply those 2 denominators together in order to get a common denominator. Now, it's not always the least, but it is always a common denominator. So 6 times 9 is 54. Therefore, 54 is a common denominator, just not the lowest. With this method, there is almost always reducing involved. Now, we found the least common denominator, so we need to move on to the second step, and that's to determine our equivalent fractions. Using that example where the LCD is 18, we need to find out what the denominators were multiplied by in order to get 18. In the top fraction, the denominator was multiplied by 3, so I need to multiply the numerator by 3. And 2 times 3 is 6. In the bottom fraction, the denominator was multiplied by 2 to get 18, so I need to multiply the numerator by 2. And 2 times 2 is 4. My original fractions are now written as equivalent fractions with our least common denominator of 18. Moving along to our next step in the process, we need to add our fractions together. We have 6/18 and 4/18. Remember, we do not add our denominators together because the denominators are only a label that identifies the size of our pieces in the whole. What we're actually doing is counting how many pieces of the whole we have. We start with 6/18 and add to that 4 more 18ths. We end up with 10 18ths altogether. Our final step is to reduce our answer to lowest terms if possible. With my fraction of 10 18ths, I see that both my numerator and denominator are even. Therefore, I can divide the top and bottom by 2. In doing that, my fraction is reduced to 5/9. And since 1 is the only common factor of both 5 and 9, my fraction is reduced to lowest terms possible. So the answer to 2/6 plus 2/9 is 5/9. To review, in order to add or subtract fractions with different denominators, we first need to find a common denominator. And then we express our fractions as equivalent fractions using that common denominator, add or subtract the fractions, and then reduce to lowest terms if possible.